Can India create its own Ivy League? Asked The Economist in its latest edition. Now, this is what is called a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a figure of speech which requires no answer, but is intended to provoke thought. And here am I, provoked by this rhetorical question, and the subject turns to the state of India's universities. These are my thoughts. First of all, The Economist posed that rhetorical question against a certain background, and that was Trump's attack on academic freedom and the top universities of the USA, including such iconic universities like Harvard, Columbia, Princeton. You can think of anything. And he already issued orders withdrawing federal funds. Columbia rolled over and just died as an independent institution. Harvard was one exception to this. They stood their ground, they showed spine, and perhaps when the history of academic freedom in universities is written, this will rank right at the top. Harvard's president, Alan Garber, enunciated a set of principles, while he said no way in which he would budge, no way he would be bullied. And these principles are excellent principles by which we could judge a template for all universities who call themselves universities, because the essence of all universities is academic freedom. Now, it is also remarkable that Alan Garber's enunciation of principles is also in excellent lean prose, no adjectives, which I liked very much. That's a side thought, that the prose is devoid of adjectives. Verbs and nouns tell the whole intent. So, these principles, 4 of them, are something like this. The first one: no government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and what areas of study and research they can pursue. Remarkable for its clear sentences. Actually one sentence, but no verbs, no adjectives. Now, I thought this was very prescient for Alan Garber to say, because I immediately thought of our own case, of our own universities, of which I'll come into in detail a little later. But I can't but help commenting that these principles are completely absent here in India, where every decision in the universities, public and private, every decision, hiring, funding, syllabus, travels, international conferences, or invitations to faculty from other universities or other countries, researchers coming in and going from here to other countries or coming in here from other countries, are all controlled by some bureaucratic Indian agency. Call them by any name. They go by different names. But all are bureaucrats, Babudam, AICTE and UGC, and of course the state government department. State is, education is a concurrent subject, and the central government departments. So the absence, the total absence of the number one principle, which Alan Garber, president of Harvard University, enunciated. The whole system in India is broken. The second principle, we're getting back to Alan Garber's enunciation of principles, which I said is a good template to decide what the university is meant for. Excellence in discovery and learning requires the ability to advance ideas and explore them fully, to challenge accepted wisdom, to disagree productively, and to recognize that we will often make mistakes as we learn. Making mistakes as a part of a learning process. This is what the second principle is about. The third principle, enunciated by Alan Garber, president of Harvard University, is this: exposure to different backgrounds, different perspectives, different experiences leads to intellectual and personal growth. That's wonderful. Intellectual and personal growth. Maintaining an atmosphere open to debate and the space for varied viewpoints, is an imperative of a university. These points can definitely be considered a template for what a university is. Now let us pause a little while and take our mind from the principles to some telling indices, some telling international indices that are relevant to India, because our subject is the state of India's universities. The Academic Freedom Index puts India's score in 2023 as 0.182. 0 is the lowest and 1 is the highest. So just a little above the lowest, 0.182. Our own historical average over a number of years stood at 0.586. But the present score puts India somewhere at the bottom 20 to 30%. There is another index, Scholars at Risk. All these indices are composed by people who are not, who are neutral, who are not particularly unfriendly to India or anything of that sort. They are pretty. They actually, there is an association of universities and scholars who do this thing. Scholars at Risk is called the Freedom Monitoring Project. Between September 2022 and September 2023, recorded a total of 243 violations of academic freedom globally, and 37 violations of academic freedom were recorded from India. These included wrongful dismissals, travel restrictions, arrests, campus surveillance, and physical intimidation. You get the drift, all this kind of thing. Even this organization is well known and has been doing work for about 25 years. We come to another ranking, World University Rankings. It's well known, QS and Times Higher Education. The sad part of it is that key institutions like the IITs have been boycotting the QS rankings since 2020. But then they have still, they still thought that they would have to comment on other universities and institutions of excellence in India. And what they commented was that our institutions lack the research infrastructure, global collaborations, or academic reputation of international peers, and therefore India is not visible globally. No Indian institution ranks within the top 300. As I said, the top institutions like the IITs refused to participate. The top Chinese universities like Tsinghua, Peking, Zhejiang, that is the deep Sikh people, or Nanjing, constantly figure in the nature capital, top 10 to 25 list. Indian universities do not make an appearance there at all. So that is one part of the metrics that we could apply to see our universities, in a manner of speaking, in the mirror. What is the funding like? Funding matters. All 23 IITs together get about 8,100 crores. A single US private universities at the middle level, not anywhere near Harvard, middle level, gets a funding of 50,000 crores. An average Chinese university, and when you speak of Chinese universities, it is government funding, high government funding, 70 to 80% government funding. An average Chinese university gets 25,000 crores. This is the comparison. What about research output and quality? First of all, I must say that there's been very good, in fact, very good, excellent work by the top institutions of the IIT. In sustainable development and engineering, and the output has been impressive. IIT Kanpur leads in impact, and IIT Bombay and Madras in productivity. Even so, in comparison with international output, international research output and quality, India lags a little behind. In the period 2011 to 2020, Indian universities, mainly the IITs, published 4,683 AI papers. The corresponding figure of China's universities is 34,687, more than 8 times. So there we are, some idea of these international indices and where we stand. There is another telling index, and that is really the most obvious thing. At least 70% of the IIT graduates that go to the United States or to European countries continue to stay there. This brain drain is there. They never return, not because they don't love our country, their own country, but because of the research facilities there, the atmosphere there, the atmosphere that is conducive to research and development. That is why most of these institutions have very big presence of Indian researchers, Indian faculty, Indian professors there. The domestic ecosystem, the research ecosystem, the academic system continues to lose critical human capital. So, we are doing the heavy lifting for American research institutions and American institutions of academic excellence. Our students study very hard. They go through competitive exams, I speak about the IITs, which are perhaps the most stringent in the world because the number selected and the number appeared. That you can't have it anywhere. The minuscule number who get in. For what result? We are contributing to America's institutions. We are doing the heavy lifting for them. This is not just a brain drain, but a severe commentary on the state of India's universities and research institutions. When will this change? I have no crystal ball to look into the future, nor will I be entering into that territory which practically everyone fears to tread because of the tremendous uncertainty involved in predicting the future. But one thing I know, this telling sign of brain drain and exodus as high as 70 to 75%, when that comes down and at a time it reverses where others come into our institutions, then at that moment we can say we are in the Ivy League. When that will be, I can't say, but not at any time soon. I would put it as another 20 years from now.